The rain had stopped just minutes before she stepped off the bus, leaving behind a faint mist that curled along the sidewalk like whispers not yet spoken. Alina Gray pulled her coat tighter around her as she stood in front of the restaurant, its glass doors catching reflections of warm chandeliers and fine linen tables inside. She stared at her reflection, hair slightly frizzed from humidity, heels slightly worn from years of reuse, a navy blue dress that had once belonged to her older sister. It didn't feel like her life fit in this kind of place, but here she was, because Lauren, her roommate, and one-woman pep squad had insisted. You need to believe you belong in more than just your neighborhood diner and sketchbooks. She had said that morning, pushing Alina's shoulders gently. You said yes to a blind date. That's a beginning. Show up for yourself. And Alina, after weeks of polite rejections and self-doubt, had agreed. She stepped inside. The air smelled of rosemary, grilled citrus, and wealth. The host smiled with practiced ease, but Alina simply nodded and scanned the room. Table 6, she whispered to herself, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her heart thudded as she walked, eyes darting past elegant couples and well-dressed solo diners. Then she saw him. He sat alone, close to the back, a man in his early 30s, dark hair neatly swept back, gray suit tailored to perfection. He looked calm, immersed in something on his phone, unaware that a storm of nerves was walking straight toward him. This had to be him. Hi, she said, her voice almost drowned by the room's quiet luxury. You must be Mark. I'm Alina. He looked up, and in that 1 second, the world didn't spin or stop. It simply softened. His eyebrows lifted, just slightly. His mouth parted, but no sound came out. A beat passed. Then a gentle smile. Hi, Alina. Nice to meet you. She sat down, exhaling too fast. Blind dates are weird, right? My friend Lauren told me you might be a little reserved, but that's okay. I can talk for both of us if you want. The man across from her gave a small laugh, polite, but not unkind. She took that as encouragement and pressed on, chattering nervously about her walkover, about the rain, even about the dessert menu. He listened, nodding occasionally, letting her words fill the space. I work at a cafe, she said eventually, her voice dipping. I mean, not glamorous. I do wait tables, but I also do the chalkboard art out front. You know, little quotes and illustrations. I guess I've always been more of a drawer than a talker. His eyes sparked, just a flicker. What about you? She asked. What do you do? He paused, a pause long enough for the answer to be careful. I work in tech, he said. Oh, wow. Like computers and stuff. That's impressive. I'm the type who still Googles how to copy and paste. He smiled wider, more naturally this time. It's something like that. As the dinner went on, something unexpected began to bloom between them. Her nervous energy softened into warmth, and he responded with more of himself, gentle observations, quiet humor, a few confessions about how exhausting people could be when they always wanted something. She shared stories about her mother, who worked 2 jobs and still found time to teach her daughter how to paint with leftover watercolors. She told him about her dream of one day opening a little art studio where kids who couldn't afford lessons could come and create. "You're not what I expected," she said. Halfway through her second glass of water, he looked up. "What did you expect?" "I don't know, something slicker, louder. But you listen." He tilted his head. "You make it easy to listen." For a moment, she felt weightless. And then her phone buzzed. She glanced down and saw the message. "Hey, Alina, I'm at table 6. Looking forward to meeting you. Mark." She froze, her throat tightened. Slowly, she lifted her gaze to the man across from her. "You're not Mark, are you?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. His face shifted, not with guilt, but with something more complicated. Regret, maybe. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not." It took her a second to register. Then, like a wave pulling her under, embarrassment washed over her. "Oh my God," she muttered, scrambling up. I'm so sorry. I sat at the wrong table. This is so." "Alina, wait," he began, standing with her. But she was already reaching for her coat, face burning. "I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. This is just." And then she was gone. Outside, the rain had started again, a quiet drizzle against the pavement. Inside, he stood at the empty table, hands still halfway raised, the moment dissolving around him. It had been 3 days, 3 long days, since Alina rushed out of the restaurant with her heart tangled in confusion and her cheeks stained in silent humiliation. She hadn't told Lauren everything yet, only that the date was a disaster. But disaster wasn't quite the word. It was something else, something she didn't know how to name. She hadn't been embarrassed just because she sat at the wrong table. She was embarrassed because she had felt something real in those fleeting minutes. A stranger had looked at her like she wasn't invisible, like she mattered. But he wasn't her date. He wasn't even supposed to be in her story. Still, when her phone buzzed with a new message the next morning, her heart skipped before her brain caught up. She stared at the name. Unknown number. "Hi, Alina. This is the guy from the restaurant, though clearly not your date. I hope you're okay. I know it was a strange way to meet, but I'd really like to see you again. Maybe just for coffee. No mix-ups this time. No name. Still so careful." She stared at the message for 5 minutes straight. Then she locked her phone and went back to washing dishes. But she couldn't stop thinking about the way he had listened, the way he'd smiled, not the rehearsed kind, but the small one that happened without planning. She showed the message to Lauren that night. "Wait," he reached out. Lauren asked, eyebrows arching with amusement. "This is like some Netflix-level meet cute. You should go." Alina bit her lip. What if he's just being polite? Lauren shook her head. "Elle, you said yourself he wasn't just nice." "He was. What was the word you used?" Alina stared at the floor. "Present." Lauren nodded. "Then go. What's the worst that happens? It's just coffee." So Alina replied the next morning. "Coffee sounds nice." They agreed to meet at a cafe on the edge of downtown, modest, cozy. not the kind of place where people wore suits to impress. She arrived early, her heart galloping in quiet anticipation. He was already there when she stepped in. This time, he wasn't dressed like he belonged to another world. Jeans, a simple sweater, a slightly awkward smile as he waved at her from the corner table. "Hi," she said, settling in across from him. "Hi," he replied, his tone warm. "Thanks for coming." They ordered coffee. She tried to quiet the storm inside her. And then, just like before, the conversation took on a life of its own. They spoke about favorite books and childhood hobbies. He asked about her sketches, where she drew, when she started, what she loved most. She found herself telling him things she didn't often say aloud, like how she once drew her way through grief after her father died, or how she still carried a tiny sketch of her mother and sister folded inside her wallet. He listened again, and this time it wasn't the magic of a mistaken identity. It was just them, two people in a cafe, finding comfort in conversation. "What do you do, really?" she asked at one point, playfully narrowing her eyes. He smiled. "I told you I work in tech. That's vague." He chuckled. "Startups mostly. Software. It's not as glamorous as it sounds." She leaned back, sipping her coffee. "It sounds complicated." "It can be," he admitted, "but I like building things quietly." Behind the curtain, the phrase lingered in her mind. Behind the curtain. That's how he moved, like someone who didn't want the spotlight, just the connection. They left the cafe walking side by side, the autumn breeze playing with fallen leaves around their feet. She led him to a small park, her favorite one, a place with old stone benches and a little pond where ducks gathered. "This is where I come when I can't think," she said, "when the world feels too loud." He watched her pull a sketchbook from her bag, its corners frayed. She flipped through it, revealing sketches so detailed they looked like they breathed, faces full of sorrow, joy, wonder. "These are incredible," he whispered. She shrugged. "They're just mine. I don't share them." "You should," he said. "People would see them and feel something." She looked at him, then really looked, and something stirred in her chest, something that felt terrifying, because she was starting to care, and she still didn't know his name. Billionaire woke up with a smile that morning. It wasn't loud joy, just a quiet warmth tucked beneath her ribs, like the way sunlight filters through curtains on a slow Sunday. She hadn't planned to see him again so soon, but that's what happens with people who feel inevitable. His name was still a mystery. She had decided not to press him. Not yet. There was something delicate forming between them, and she didn't want to weigh it down with questions too early. Maybe she was foolish. Maybe she was naive. But she hadn't felt seen like this in a long time. Not since her father passed. Not since the world got smaller and louder, and more about survival than wonder. Later that day, as she stepped out of the cafe where she worked, she found him leaning against the lamppost by the crosswalk, hands in pockets, smile already blooming when he saw her. "You waiting for someone?" she teased. "Maybe," he said, "but I'm hoping it's you." They walked for hours that afternoon, no destination, just a rhythm. He carried her bag when it got heavy, joked about the birds that followed them for breadcrumbs, asked her to explain the difference between oil paint and watercolors. At the corner market, he insisted on carrying the groceries, even the heavy ones. "You're going to regret this," she laughed. "I'll take my chances." When they reached her apartment building, he looked up at the cracked bricks and flickering hallway light and said, "This place has character." She rolled her eyes. "That's a generous way to put it." Inside, he helped her unpack. Her living room was filled with scattered pencils, open sketchbooks, half-finished canvases. He looked around like he'd stepped into a secret museum. "You live inside your art," he murmured. "I guess," she said, suddenly shy. "It's how I breathe." Later, over cups of lukewarm tea and stories about childhood, she found herself telling him about her mother, about the long shifts at the clinic, the medical bills that always hovered, the way her mom still kept Aliner's first crayon doodle taped to the fridge. "She's everything," Aliner said, voice softening, "and I feel like I'm always falling short." "You're not," he said, his voice low and certain. "You're stronger than you think." The words landed somewhere deep, somewhere she didn't realize had been empty. A few evenings later, he picked her up for an art gallery opening. She didn't own heels fancy enough or a dress that sparkled, but she wore the one thing she always could, her awe. She wandered from canvas to canvas, eyes wide, her fingers barely twitching at her sides, as if sketching invisible outlines. He watched her as she stood before a painting of a father and daughter fishing by a lake brushstrokes wide and soft, full of light. She didn't speak at first. Then, quietly, "This reminds me of my dad." He looked at her. "Did you go fishing?" "Every summer. Same lake, same tackle box. He taught me to wait, to sit with the silence." She turned to him, tears threatening her composure. "He believed in me before I did." Without thinking, he placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "He'd be proud. I hope you know that." She didn't answer, not with words, but the look in her eyes told him she heard it, felt it. As they walked home, the silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of everything unsaid. She stopped suddenly and asked, "Why me?" He blinked. "What do you mean? You could be doing anything, with anyone. Why are you spending time with me?" He hesitated. "Because when I'm around you," he said slowly, "it feels real. And I didn't know how much I needed that." She smiled faintly, but looked away. She wanted to believe him, but doubt had a way of lingering like shadows, even on the brightest days. Still, that night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the way he looked at her, not through her. And for the first time in years, her dreams were not about escape. They were about what might be possible. The sky was silver that morning, stretched thin with the weight of clouds, not quite ready to cry. Aliner was volunteering at a local fundraising gala, held in one of the city's more polished venues, marble floors, champagne trays, and polished speeches. It was the kind of place where she often felt like an extra in someone else's film. Still, she smiled as she arranged silent auction items on linen-covered tables. Each item had a story, a purpose, all meant to raise money for after-school art programs. Exactly the kind of mission that spoke to her heart. She didn't expect him to be there, but the moment he stepped into the ballroom, something shifted in the air. She felt it before she saw it, a ripple, a hush, the way people turned and straightened their backs. Then she looked up, and there he was, tall, impeccably dressed, charisma blooming around him like a spotlight he hadn't asked for, but owned effortlessly. Her heart stilled. The host took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to welcome our primary benefactor this evening, Mr. Nathaniel Reed. Applause thundered around her, and her chest caved in. Nathaniel, not Matthew, not the man she thought she was slowly falling for, but Nathaniel Reed, the tech entrepreneur whose face sometimes appeared in headlines she never clicked on. A name whispered in elite spaces she never entered. A billionaire. She felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Her hands trembled. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she heard Lauren's voice say, "Trust is the soil love grows in." And hers had just been pulled from the roots. She waited until the speeches ended, until the crowd thinned, until he was standing alone, nursing a drink that no longer seemed to comfort him. Then she approached. He looked up, startled but not surprised. "Billionaire." Her voice didn't shake. "We need to talk." He nodded, led her toward a quiet hallway, away from the clinking glasses and polite conversations. "So," she said, crossing her arms, "Nathaniel Reed." He winced just slightly. "I wanted to tell you. I almost did so many times. But you didn't. I was afraid. The way you saw me, just me, no expectations, no filters. I didn't want to lose that." She stared at him. "So you lied." "I didn't mean to," he said. "At first, it was a mistake. You thought I was someone else. And it was the first time in years someone talked to me like I wasn't a project or an opportunity. I didn't want it to end, and when it turned into something real," his voice softened, "then I didn't know how to undo it without losing you." Her throat burned. "You made me feel safe, like I could trust you, and it was all built on a lie." "No," he said, eyes searching hers. "What we shared was real, every moment, every word." She shook her head. "But you chose to let me believe something false. You decided for me what I could handle." He stepped closer, but didn't reach for her. "I was scared. And I'm hurt," she said. "Do you see how unfair that is?" He nodded. "I do, and I'm sorry." She didn't cry. Not there. But when she turned to leave, her steps were heavy with everything she didn't say. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his voice echoing in the silence. Meanwhile, Nathaniel stood alone in his high-rise office, the skyline bright beyond the glass. But inside, all he saw was her walking away. "I broke something," he said aloud. Claire, his longtime assistant, entered with a cup of coffee and concern in her eyes. "She found out?" she asked. He nodded. "And I don't know how to fix it." Claire studied him for a moment, then stopped trying to fix it with words. "Show her. Show her that she matters more than your pride." He looked at her. Slowly, the weight shifted in his stance. "I have an idea." It took weeks, quiet weeks. He moved like someone carrying something sacred, cautiously, deliberately. He worked with a local gallery owner in secret, buying out a small space Alina had once pointed to on a walk. He framed every sketch of hers he could find, ones she had posted online, ones he had asked Lauren for quietly. He lit them perfectly, hung them like declarations, and on the center pedestal, he left a single note. No name, just words. Your art deserves the world. You deserve truth. You deserve someone who sees you for all you are. Let me try again. Then he left. Alina was walking home from work when Lauren appeared, flushed and urgent. You need to come with me. Lauren, I'm tired. No, you need to see this. They walked in silence until they reached the gallery. When Alina read the sign on the door, her breath caught. A special exhibit, the art of Alina Gray. Her fingers trembled as she pushed the door open. Inside, her world bloomed back at her. Every sketch, every memory, every hope made visible. And in the center, the note. She picked it up. Read it once, then again. Her eyes welled, but this time, it wasn't just sadness. It was something else. Then, from behind a divider, he stepped out. No suit, no fanfare, just him. And the hope that this time she might stay. She didn't speak at first. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, drinking in every detail. The frames, the lighting, the sketches she never imagined would hang on white gallery walls, the note still in her hand. Then she looked at him. Nathaniel stood quietly, not hiding, but not pushing forward either. His expression wasn't confident. It was hopeful in the most human way, fragile, silent, waiting. I don't know what to say, Alina whispered. You don't have to say anything, he replied. She stepped toward the closest wall, tracing the edge of a sketch with her eyes. It was one she'd done on a napkin late at night, an old man holding a paper boat in a puddle, his reflection that of a child. She never thought anyone would see it, but here it was, treated like it mattered. You've been listening to me, she said. I have. She turned to him. Why? Because everything you say feels worth remembering. The room was quiet. Then she asked the one question that still anchored her uncertainty. Why didn't you tell me who you were? He stepped closer, voice low. Because I didn't want you to see what everyone else sees. I wanted you to see me. And you did. You still do. That's why I'm standing here. She nodded slowly, emotions flickering across her face. You hurt me. I know. You broke my trust. I'll spend as long as it takes to earn it back. She studied him, unsure where her heart wanted to land. The betrayal had been real, but so had the connection. And now the effort. This gallery wasn't just an apology. It was a declaration, a way of saying, I see you, and I want the world to see you too. Finally, she said, this doesn't fix everything. I don't expect it to, but it matters. He nodded. You matter. She paused, then added, maybe some things deserve a second chance. His eyes lit up, but she held up a hand. I'm not promising anything yet, she said, but I'm willing to see, to walk forward, one honest step at a time. He smiled, not the charming kind, the real one, Then that's all I could ever ask for. Weeks passed, she kept drawing. He kept showing up, not with grand gestures, but with presence, with questions, with small, steady acts of support. He brought her coffee during her long nights, framing new pieces. She met his friends slowly, only when she was ready. He never rushed her, never assumed. He just kept showing up. And she, too, softened, began to believe again, not just in him, but in herself. One afternoon, as she adjusted a final frame for a new community art event, he stood beside her, holding a paint-stained rag. "I have a question," he said. He pointed toward the front of the room. "Come with me." She followed him to the center of the gallery floor. The sun was setting, gold light washing everything in a quiet kind of magic. Guests began to quiet as he turned to face her. "Billionaire," he began, voice unwavering but tender. "You sat at the wrong table that night. But from the moment we spoke, I knew you were the right one." She froze, hand hovering near her chest. "You've changed my life, not with money, not with status, but with the way you see people, the way you see me. I don't want to live another day without that." He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it, not showy, just sincere. "I love you and I always will. Would you marry me?" Gasps rose gently from the crowd, but Alina only saw him. She wiped a tear from her cheek and smiled through it. "Yes, but no more secrets." He laughed softly. "No more." Their wedding was small, held right there in the gallery, between her sketches, surrounded by students she now mentored, friends, family, and people who believed that art and love could transform a life. Later that night, as they danced under soft light, she whispered into his ear, "I'm glad I sat at the wrong table." He held her close. "It was the best mistake either of us ever made." Outside, the city hummed as usual, but inside, something sacred was taking root. A story not about wealth, not about status,